Your Honor, at this time, we would like to address some preliminary matters right before we start, if that's all right.
Okay, I'm just waiting for the final go-to.
Sorry, there's a lag between them. So if
It's okay.
we talk, they'll hear this echo back and forth. But we are live streaming now. You are broadcasting for the entire planet to see.
Mhm.
I will now call mock trial into session and turn it over to Judge Keir to begin the trial. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning to everybody. My name is Judge Keir. I'm in Courtroom 5C of Larimer County. Are the parties ready to proceed today?
Yes, Your Honor.
And is the defense ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. It's my understanding that the plaintiff has some preliminary matters. Go ahead.
Yes, we would like to ask that if there are any technology issues, we ask that the time will be stopped, and that since our witnesses are using one computer, we ask if they could have just a little bit of time just to like switch around, if that's all right.
Sure. So we can certainly just let's cross the bridge if we have any technical issues. The court can certainly allot that time, but I'd like to see what it is. The court is under the understanding that the witnesses are in the same room in this remote trial, and we will certainly allow them some time. However, that time will be accredited to your team.
Of course.
All right. Anything else, counsel?
That is all at this time.
Okay, and for the defense, do you have any preliminary matters that you'd like to address before we begin?
Your Honor, I would ask that the judge and the jury be aware of the stipulated facts, that all signatures in the paperwork are valid, and that the chain of custody is not in dispute.
Yes, they are so advised.
Your Honor, the defense would like to make sure that you, the jury, witnesses, and opposing counsel would be allowed to look at their unaltered exhibit notebooks when entering exhibits into evidence in order to speed up the flow of the trial and to avoid the technical difficulties that may come along with screen sharing exhibits.
Sure. So you're just asking the court to be able to have the jurors review the exhibits without them being presented by the screen share option. Is that right?
Yes, Your Honor.
That would be fine. And I think that's prudent. To the plaintiff, do you object to proceeding in that manner?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. All right. Anything else on behalf of the defense?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Then the plaintiffs can call their first witness.
We would like to start with our opening statement.
Yeah. Oh, yes, of course. Go ahead.
Thank you.
If you cause the cancer, you catch the consequence. May it please the court, counsel, and members of the jury. My name is Abriana Gonzalez, and I represent Dakota Weirs, who is here today bringing charges against Lush Fertilizer. Lush Fertilizer used a product named Drufo, which has been deemed unsafe and has been prohibited in other countries such as France. Despite these dangers of Drufo, Lush Fertilizer allowed employees to be around and work with this cancer-causing product. After many years as a dedicated user of Lush Fertilizer, Dakota Weirs developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Prior to this diagnosis, Dakota Weirs was very active in the community. Dakota Weirs volunteered at a homeless shelter, served as president of their school government, and skillfully played the piano. But now, this cancer diagnosis has been completely life-altering. You will hear that Dakota Weirs has lost a future, a scholarship to Juilliard, and the ability to simply participate in daily activities. Dakota Weirs is no longer able to attend small chores and can barely help around the house. Dakota Weirs will explain how they suffer from many horrible side effects, such as chest pains, swollen lymph nodes, and severe shortness of breath. My team and I will prove that Lush Fertilizer is at fault here, and that action needs to be taken. We will do this through critical pieces of evidence, as well as testimony from several witnesses. We will also be using exhibits, such as a picture of Lush Fertilizer's label. You will hear from Dakota Weirs, Carson Durst, and Dr. Casey Rogers from the plaintiff side. From Dakota Weirs, you will hear how painful this tragedy has been. Dakota Weirs is no longer able to play piano and no longer has their Juilliard scholarship. If that isn't devastating enough, Dakota Weirs also lost the ability to connect through music with their grandfather who passed away. Next, Carson Durst, who is the lead product developer of Terra's Greenery. Carson Durst looks over the line of fertilizers and lawn enhancement products. But before this, Carson Durst was an intern for Lush Fertilizer. Carson Durst's responsibility was to work on the research and development team for Lush Fertilizer and was quickly promoted to product development engineer. During this time, Carson Durst worked on developing Drufo for Lush. At Lush, there was an internal study where Carson studied the bonding agent Drufo. In this research, Carson Durst found a study from England which concluded that the particular chemical compound may be carcinogenic in rats. Unfortunately, these studies were never taken seriously. Carson Durst will bring knowledge of Lush and the members of the family who own Lush Fertilizer. Since Carson Durst first-handedly knew the Doncourt family, our last witness, Dr. Casey Rogers, who will bring in their expert opinion on how Drufo causes non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Casey Rogers also conducted a study about people who have been exposed to Drufo and people who haven't been exposed to it. The results of this study will be brought up in questioning today. Now, I anticipate you will begin hearing from Blake Doncourt, Skylar Weirs, and Dr. Devin Williams to testify from the defendant's side. Though Skylar Weirs doesn't even possess a college education, Blake Doncourt is the CEO of Lush, and Dr. Williams is friends with Blake Doncourt. We, the plaintiff, have the burden to prove to you by preponderance of evidence that Lush Fertilizer was negligent in the handling of Drufo, therefore liable for Dakota Weir's cancer. Preponderance of evidence means that it is more probable than not that Lush Fertilizer is liable. Throughout these testimonies from these witnesses, my team will go to prove that Lush Fertilizer is at fault for the cause of Dakota Weir's cancer. At the end of this trial, my co-counsel, Michaela Sanchez-Munguia, will come before you and review the testimony and evidence you have received in the case. Following that review, we will be asking that you find Lush Fertilizer is negligent, and we will be asking that you award Dakota Weirs $10 million for pain and suffering damages. Thank you.
On behalf of the defense.
Lush's warnings were thrown to the wind. Dakota Weirs has sued Lush Fertilizer, saying that their products, specifically Drufo, gave him non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Dakota Weirs will claim that Lush Fertilizer, of all of the fertilizers he used as a landscaper, was negligent. However, while attempting to prove that Lush was negligent, he will tell you how, as a landscaper, it sometimes became a little bit too hot outside, and he liked to feel the breeze against his face and skin. Dakota Weirs will tell you that despite the warnings on the packages and the warnings from his boss, he did not wear a face covering or even a long sleeve shirt or gloves. Why? Because it was a bit too hot outside. He was uncomfortable. Years later, he was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and while laying on the couch one afternoon, he saw an ad on his TV for a law firm saying that Drufo, a bonding agent used in Lush Fertilizer's products, may potentially cause lymphoma. So, despite the fact that Dakota Weirs had used many other fertilizers and many other dangerous chemicals, all without proper safety equipment, he decided to sue Lush Fertilizer for all of the damages. Any reasonable person would have worn the proper protective gear, even if it was a bit too hot outside. Caution. Hazards. Causes irritation. Wear proper protective clothing. All warnings that, as you will see today, were thrown to the wind. Dakota Weirs will tell you how Drufo was outlawed in the EU and other countries. However, this argument will quickly be discredited by the defense's last witness, Dr. Devin Williams, as he explains the reasoning behind Drufo being illegalized. Dakota Weirs will tell you that his twin, Skylar Weirs, did the same things besides landscaping as him, and she never got lymphoma. However, he will forget that he used hundreds of other harmful chemicals, again, without any protective gear during his work as a landscaper. He will try to discredit Skylar Weirs, saying that she has personal issues. However, these issues would be negated if Dakota Weirs were to win the lawsuit and the huge amount of money that comes along with it. Yet, Skylar Weirs will testify against Dakota Weirs here today. The plaintiff will bring forward Carson Durst, a prior employee of Lush Fertilizer, who was fired due to his lack of a strong work ethic and his entitled attitude. But where does he work now? At Terra's Greenery, one of the biggest competitors to Lush Fertilizer. And what does he do there? He oversees the development of Terra's Greenery's competitor to Lush's best-selling fertilizer. So naturally, he would take every opportunity to tear down his competition. He will tell you stories about how Drufo was developed in the seemingly secret and guarded approach that Lush Fertilizer used when dealing with their findings. Finally, the plaintiff will bring Dr. Casey Rogers forward. Dr. Rogers will lead you through his unpublished, unrepeatable, and unpeer-reviewed experiments and attempt to persuade you that Drufo does in fact cause lymphoma. Then the defense will call Blake Doncourt to the stand. The CEO of Lush Fertilizer will reinforce the fact that Dakota used many, many fertilizers during his days as a landscaper, and in every instance threw the warnings to the wind. However, she will also say that she doesn't blame even Dakota Weirs for the lawsuit. She blames the money-hungry lawyers behind it. She will give background on Carson Durst, saying that his complaints about Drufo only arose when he climbed the ranks at Terrace Greenery, Lush Fertilizer's biggest competitor, because it was in fact his job at Lush to prove the dangers of Drufo during its development, during which time he found none. She will also provide evidence for why Lush Fertilizer does not bake Drufo or any of its other chemicals. After Ms. Doncourt's testimony, the defendant will bring forth Skylar Weirs. She will tell of her extensive research, and despite the fact that she and her twin are having financial difficulties, she would rather fight for what is right, not what gets her out of debt. Skylar Weirs will bring forth hundreds of hours worth of research, all proving that Drufo is not carcinogenic in humans. Finally, Dr. Williams will take the stand. She will tell you about the importance of Drufo, why it was created, and why the EU and other countries banned it. Finally, she will debunk the conclusions of Dr. Rogers' experiments, as she gives summary of the statistics proving the cause or the inability to prove the cause of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. We are all sorry that Dakota Weirs has been diagnosed with lymphoma, and we wish him the swiftest recovery. However, you cannot be influenced by sympathy, and you will see today that it cannot be proven that Drufo caused Mr. Weirs cancer, or even cancer in general, and that Dakota Weirs did blatantly throw Lush's warnings to the wind. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. Are the plaintiffs ready to call their first witness?
Yes, Your Honor, we call Dr. Casey Rogers to the stand.
Okay. Good morning, Ms. Rogers.
Morning.
You can raise your right hand so I can swear you in. Do you solemnly swear under the penalty of perjury that the information and testimony here today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I solemnly swear.
All right. You may proceed.
Please state your full name and spell your last name for the record.
Dr. Casey Rogers, Rogers.
And what brings you here today?
I've been asked to come in here and testify on behalf of the plaintiff of this matter.
And what is your current occupation?
I'm currently a professor as a heteroculture and entomology department at the University of California in Berkeley.
And do you have any degrees?
Yes, I have 2 degrees.
Can you elaborate more on these degrees?
Yes, I have a bachelor's in science, agriculture, chemistry from Colorado State University, and I have a PhD in agriculture and entomology from the University of California at Berkeley. And prior to earning my PhD, I worked as a research analyst for a multinational chemical company.
And have you ever made any publications?
I have published numerous scholarly articles on negative and harmful effects to prolonged exposure to various chemicals, including Drufo.
And have you ever had to work with any companies?
I have. My research has been used in administrative advisory boards. Companies and regulatory agencies have taken my recommendations on precautions that should be taken by laborers who are exposed to chemicals.
At this time, Your Honor, I'm tendering Dr. Casey Rogers as an expert witness in the fields of toxicology and chemistry.
In the fields of toxicology and chemistry?
Yes.
Okay, response?
No objection, Your Honor.
Okay, she will so be endorsed.
Moving forward, what is your relationship with Dakota Weirs?
I have looked at her medical case file, and that's pretty much it.
And based on your knowledge as an expert, do you know if there's similar cases to Dakota Weirs?
I know Dakota Weirs is not the only person to develop non-Hodgkin's lymphoma due to exposure of Drufo.
And what caught your attention about Drufo?
I immediately became interested in Drufo when it first came to the market. I believe that it was rushed to the market without any significant studies on the safeties. So I decided to conduct my own
Objection,
studies.
speculation.
Well done. What was the question, counsel?
The question was, what caught your attention about Drufo? My witness was simply answering the question.
So counsel, your objection, speculation? Overruled.
Yes, Your Honor.
Overruled.
Would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
What caught your attention about Drufo?
Well, I had become immediately interested into Drufo when it first came out into the market. I believe it was rushed without any
Objection,
significant.
speculation.
So her response, is the objection non-responsive to the question? I guess the question doesn't necessarily elicit the response that this witness is given. So would you like to amend your objection?
No, I'm objecting to the answer to the question. She's speculating.
Okay, counsel?
Your Honor, Dr. Rogers was just entered in as an expert and is able to give her expert opinion under Rule 702. So she was just simply giving her expert opinion on this.
Well, it goes outside the scope of her expertise. The question is non-responsive or to the actual question of what caught the eye. So the court will not sustain based on speculation, but based on non-responsive.
Okay. Let's move forward. What is Drufo?
Drufo is a patent ingredient that Lush uses in all of its products as a bonding agent. And Drufo is mainly used in fertilizer to keep the fertilizer preserved and intact.
And what is the history of Drufo?
Drufo was developed in 2003 by Lush Fertilizers scientists and research development team.
Do products contain Drufo at Lush Fertilizer Incorporation?
Yes, Lush Fertilizer has Drufo in it.
And how do you know this?
I have personally analyzed the chemical makeup of each product by using a mass spectrometer.
Can you talk more about the research that you've done on Drufo?
As it is already known that Drufo is carcinogenic in rats, so I decided to put together a study, and this study had a controlled group of people, and within that controlled group of people, these people had never been exposed to Drufo. And to follow another group, I followed another group that had people who used products containing Drufo, and within who used it on a daily basis. And within that, I was able to find that people were usually farm laborers who use this fertilizer in the field. And that study had, I had followed and monitored that group of people for many years.
And what were the results of this study that you did?
The study had found an increase of serious health conditions and diagnosed within those individuals who were exposed to Drufo, as compared to the controlled group I had. I was able to find that there was a higher incidence of cancer, including non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And as a result, people who were with prolonged exposure were 10 times more likely to be diagnosed with cancer than those who were exposed occasionally to Drufo were 5 times more likely to be diagnosed with cancer as those who are on, with occasional exposure. And as a result of that, suggested that there was a correlation between exposure of Drufo and cancer. And the majority of the diagnoses with cancer were diagnosed with ectocrine and exocrine-based varieties, which is a ladder of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
And what is non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is a specific type of cancer that had, which affects the white blood cells that are called lymphocytes, and the lymph symptoms is a part of the immune system.
Can you tell the jury more about non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
Yes, the immune system helps the body fight off infections and other diseases and helps move the fluid around the body. The lymphoma can start in any area of the body containing lymph tissue.
Objection outside of the scope of expertise.
Response, counsel?
Your Honor, Dr. Casey Rogers was entered in as an expert in toxicology and chemistry, so therefore it is in her scope of knowledge, and she's just speaking on it on her expert knowledge that she has.
That, I guess, with regards to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and its reaction to the chemical?
Yes.
Okay, objection sustained.
How is non-Hodgkin's lymphoma caused?
Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is not genetic. It is usually caused by exposure to environmental conditions, including pesticides. These toxins in the pesticides can be absorbed through the skin or inhaled through the respiratory system.
Is non-Hodgkin's lymphoma curable?
It's not curable, but it can be controlled.
And how did non-Hodgkin's lymphoma start to attack Mrs. Weir's body?
The collection of lymph containing cells damaged by the exposure of Drufo to foreign particles from Drufo on a scale of bacteria and viruses entered Mrs. Weir's tissue and diffused through and into the space between Weir's skin and lung tissue. As those damaged cells and particles accumulated in the lymph nodes, their concentration could have overwhelmed the immune function and the lymphocytes cells, resulting in a metastasizing cancerous masses. From there, lymphoma is any form is nearly inedible.
How did Mrs. Weir's get non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
In my expert opinion, I believe Mrs. Weir's got a non-Hodgkin's lymphoma due to a prolonged exposure to Drufo.
That is all, Your Honor.
All right, cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Weers, when dealing with fertilizer of any kind, proper protection should be used.
Yes.
This proper protection including a face mask,
Yes, it would.
long sleeves,
I would say so.
long pants,
Yes.
and gloves.
Yes.
When dealing with specifically lush fertilizer, this same protection should be used.
Yes, especially it has Drufo in it.
All right, now let's move on to your personal experiment. This is there's a control group who had never been exposed to Drufo.
Yes.
One that was occasionally exposed to Drufo,
Yes.
and one that was frequently exposed.
Yes, like farmers who would use the fertilizer.
And these farmers may have been exposed to other pesticides
It is possible.
or exposed to other fertilizers, maybe.
It is possible they used other fertilizer.
Not purely just exposed to Drufo.
Well, the fertilizer that they had used was lush fertilizer, which had Drufo in it.
Did you provide this published experiment for this case?
I have not.
And the overwhelming outcome of this study was that this group had an increase in serious health conditions,
Yes.
namely cancer.
Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma was one of the types of cancers they had been exposed to.
And this is the same condition the plaintiff in this case suffers from.
Yes, Dakota Weers suffers from non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right. Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Why did you choose not to publish your study?
I'm not a publisher, so I would not publish my study.
That is all, Your Honor.
All right, any recross based on that?
No, Your Honor.
All right. May this witness stand down. Go ahead, plaintiff.
The plaintiff calls Carson Durst to the stand.
Okay.
Please state your and
Oh, let me swear you in. Ms. Durst, if you could raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're going to give the court today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Go ahead.
please state your name and spell your last name for the record.
Carson Durst, D-U-R-S-T.
Thank you. And where do you work, Carson?
I work at Terrace Greenery, and I look over the line of fertilizer and lawn enhancement products.
Why are you here today?
I'm here today to prove that Lush Fertilizers products can cause sickness and to give my firsthand knowledge on the company since I worked at the company and I've known its owners personally.
When did you previously work at Lush?
Well, I started in 2003 and I ended in 2006, right after I had graduated from college with a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering.
How did you get hired at Lush Fertilizer?
I applied as an intern and I got accepted as an intern, and I was soon promoted to a full-time job as a product development engineer.
And what was Lush in the process of researching while you were hired?
When I got hired, Lush was in the process of testing the safety of the bonding agent Drufo, and the first study was done in-house by the research and development team.
Let's talk about the research that Lush Fertilizer conducted. Were you involved in this research?
Yes, I was.
What did you do when researching Drufo?
I was tasked with researching one of the chemical compounds that had compromised Drufo, and as product development engineers on the team, we kept notebooks chronicling our analysis.
And did you find any studies from outside of the US?
Yes, I did.
Without saying what those findings were, what were the nature of these findings?
They were very damaging to the company.
What did you do with these findings?
Well, Jerry Langley, the product manager, had reviewed my notebook, which I had put the studies in my notebook, but they were never taken seriously.
Was there ever another in-house study after this?
Yes, we got word from higher up that Lush was doing another in-house study.
Now, I want to go ahead and discuss your relationship with Lake Doncourt. What happened after this second in-house study?
I went to talk with Blake because the executive team at Lush had confronted me about my complaints and they made me sign a performance improvement plan.
What was this improvement plan on?
It basically meant that I was in a probationary status with the company and that I was relegated to the assignments that no one had
Objection,
wanted.
relevance.
What's the relevance, counsel?
Your Honor, I'm just giving background and laying foundation for my witness along with establishing what happened to them while they worked at Lush Fertilizer.
All right, but why is it relevant?
This goes to establish her credibility and how she was involved at Lush.
Overruled.
Would you like me to re-ask the question?
Yes, please.
What was this improvement plan?
This improvement plan meant that I was in a probationary status with the company and I was relegated to the assignments that no one had wanted.
So what happened when you talked to Blake about this?
Blake had refused to intervene, which I was really not expecting from a long-term mentor and a close family friend. And a few months later, I had another abysmal performance review.
I'm sorry to hear that. What happened after this?
I realized that I had no future with Lush Fertilizers, so I went to talk to Blake again.
And what was Blake's demeanor at this time?
Blake was red-faced and seeming on the verge of exploding into another tirade, and he really didn't do much when I told him about my issue.
And what happened after this?
I felt confused and betrayed by someone who was like family to me, so I started looking for another job, and I saw that Terrace Greenery had openings.
When did you start working for Terrace Greenery?
After I was fired in 2006, I had already been hired by Terrace Greenery, and that's when a legal battle ensued.
Sorry to hear that. Why did a legal battle ensue?
Well, when Lush found out that I was working for Terrace Greenery, they tried getting a court order and joining me from working there.
What was the reason for that?
Lush feared that trade secrets would be inadvertently disclosed, given the overlap of products that were produced by both companies. And I couldn't believe that Blake had ignored my concerns, but was now concerned with my expertise.
Were there any other legal issues after this?
Well, I did not remember this at the time, but I had apparently signed a confidentiality agreement when I was first starting to work at Lush.
What did this confidentiality agreement contain?
It basically stated that I could not disclose Lush Fertilizer trade secrets or work for any other company that would benefit from the disclosure of trade secrets.
Was this ever solved?
Yes, an agreement was reached where Terrace Greenery and I begrudgingly agreed that I would not start my employment with them for a period of 6 months.
And do the difficulties you had in the relationship with the Dawn Courts have an impact of how you testify today?
No, although I have emotions from my personal life with the Dawn Courts, my testimony today has been truthful and not impacted by said feelings.
And going back to how you decided to leave Lush, what made you gravitate towards Tara's Greenery?
Well, fertilizer was really all I knew, so it
Objection,
made sense
relevance.
to
What was the question?
I was going back to why they decided to leave Lush. What made them gravitate towards Tara's Greenery?
Made the witness gravitate towards the other company?
Yes.
Response to the objection.
The relevance here is that my client is here to, can I have a moment to confer with co-counsel?
Yes.
This is relevant. I am just trying to establish that my witness is not biased here in today's testifying for today.
The court will allow it, but not far.
Would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
What made you gravitate towards Tara's Greenery?
Fertilizer was really all I knew, so it made sense to work in the same field.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Okay, cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. 1 second. You worked at Lush Fertilizer.
Yes, I did.
Your main job there was to test the product safety.
Yes,
You researched Drufo.
yes,
Drufo contains many different chemical compounds,
yes,
but you were given the job of researching just one of them.
yes,
You found studies on rats,
yes, I did.
but not a single report on humans.
No, I couldn't find any.
Your coworkers also did research,
Yes, they did.
and one of your superiors compiled all the research
Yes, Jerry Langley, the product manager.
and put it into one report,
Yes,
and they sent it to administration.
I assume so.
But you can only speculate about what happens after that point.
Yeah, it was above my pay grade.
Lush Fertilizer has the best-selling fertilizer on the market,
Currently, yes.
and you work at Terrace Greenery,
Yes, I do.
one of Lush Fertilizer's biggest competitors,
Yes,
developing a fertilizer
yes,
that you hope will surpass Lush Fertilizer's best-selling product.
yes,
You went to see Blake Doncourt, the CEO, about Gary Langley,
yeah,
claiming that they were being unfair to you.
yes. Blake was a close family friend, and I had hoped that he would have sympathy to me.
And Blake Doncourt dismissed you,
Yes,
saying you needed to just do your job.
pretty much.
And you decided after that to search for new jobs.
Yes, I felt that I had no future with Lush.
And you applied for the opening at Terrace Greenery,
Yes, I did.
Lush Fertilizer's biggest competitor,
Yes.
because it would make Blake Doncourt angry.
No, because fertilizer was all I knew, so I assumed that that would be a good place to work.
You got the job after you were fired from Lush Fertilizer.
Yes, I had already been hired after I was fired.
May opposing counsel refer to what has been previously marked for identification purposes as Exhibit 5? Mr. Durst, may you direct your attention to what has been previously marked for identification purposes as Exhibit 5?
Yes.
Please turn to the second page.
Okay.
That is your signature,
Yes.
and this is a non-compete agreement.
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, I move the court to enter what has previously been marked as Exhibit 5 into evidence.
Response?
Objection, Your Honor, lack of foundation.
Your Honor, the witness has just testified to this being their signature on the second page of the document, and as was stated earlier, the signatures are not in dispute.
Overruled. The court will accept Exhibit 5.
This force you not to work at any competing company.
It says, one second, please. For a period of 2 years. Yes.
And you were hired by Terrace Greenery
Yes, I was.
before you had even been fired by Lush,
Yes.
but you don't remember signing this document?
No, not at the time.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
All right. Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. What happened with your findings of the research after Gary Langley saw them?
Can you restate the question? It was choppy.
Yes. After your research, what happened when they were taken to higher management?
I'm really not sure. That was above my pay grade.
Okay. And what degrees do you hold?
I have a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering.
Objection outside the scope of cross.
Response.
Your Honor, my witness degree.
I'm sorry, I couldn't understand that. It was choppy.
I am building my witness's credibility.
The objection sustained.
And how do you feel about getting hired while knowing the Dawn courts?
I feel that it was partially kind of unprofessional.
Objection outside the scope of cross.
Response.
Can I have a moment to confer with co-counsel?
You may.
Thank you. During the cross with my witness, they established a relationship with Blake Doncourt, and I am just going back to that.
Overruled.
Would you like me to repeat the question, Mr.?
Yes.
How do you feel about getting hired while knowing the Dawn courts?
I felt that I still feel that it is somewhat unprofessional since I had no experience, but I was grateful for the acceptance of me on the team.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
All right. Any requests based on that?
None, Your Honor.
All right. Plaintiff may call their next witness.
We would like to call Dakota Weirs to the stand, Your Honor.
All right. All right. Do I have opposing count? There we go. There we go. All right. All right. Ms. Weirs, if you could raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear under the penalty of perjury that the information you're going to give the court today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I swear. I swear.
Are there any other individuals hearing feedback? Can you give me a thumbs up? So I'm not sure what's happening here.
Is there a problem with my audio?
I'm not sure. I'm getting double feedback. Let me try. All right. All right. Let me try mute myself and then I'll.
Is it better? Okay, perfect. Could you state your name and spell it for the record?
I'm sorry, I was unmuted.
Could you state your name and spell the last for the record?
My name is Dakota Weirs. W-E-I-R-S.
Hold on, we're getting some more feedback. Are the other parties hearing that, or is that just the court? Everyone's hearing it.
Can I apologize. Can I ask if Lemongrass, the witness, and the attorney are in the same room?
We are not.
This is the first problem we've had. The only, I suspect it's either plaintiff or defense counsel because these were the only two that were not the computers already on. So perhaps let me try defense counsel muting them.
It's not me. We believe that it's the plaintiff's attorney's volume is too high.
Okay,
Let me adjust that. Is it getting any better?
let me see. I'm hearing myself loop back. Is everybody hearing me twice?
I only hear you once.
Okay. Mr. Arod, any other ideas?
Someone may have their live stream going at the same time, and that may be causing the feedback loop. In our first round, one of the scorers had the live stream open at the same time, and that caused a feedback loop. But I'm not sure.
That's accurate. That happens, and why I have to exit out of it as well. If everybody can ensure they do not have the YouTube live stream going at the same time.
I do not.
Not either.
Okay. And is anybody getting the feedback still?
Yes. I now hear it whenever anyone talks except plaintiff's counsel, I think.
So
Can I get defense counsel to speak again?
Yes, you can.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm only hearing it. And then can I get the witness, lemongrass witness to speak again?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So now plaintiff attorney, can you speak?
Yes.
All right.
it seems to occur when Mr. I'm sorry, Greg, your name cuts off on mine. So it seems to happen when yours is unmuted.
Yes. So let's
Would you
try.
like us to switch computers?
Why
I'm
don't you
not-
try that?
Okay.
And then maybe just turn this audio off, make certain that this audio is off.
Okay. Could you give us a moment to do that, Your Honor?
Sure. For the record, this happens in my courtroom with some consistency, that we get some feedback and we have to work through together about where the problem lies. The fun of technology.
So slightly off topic, I did tell the other coordinators I would be willing to do trial outside if necessary next year.
like they started at any public forum in any park.
Absolutely. It'll be old school trials.
I like that.
Is the issue fixed? We just tried switching computers.
Let me test my audio. Is anybody hearing feedback? Give me a thumbs up if you hear the feedback. All right, I think we are ready to roll. So counsel, I'm not sure if you heard, this happens in real life all the time, and we have to kind of just step back and figure out how the audio is going to be resolved. So the plaintiff may call your next witness. Let's start there.
We would like to call Dakota Weirs to the stand.
All right, Ms. Weirs, again, I'm going to swear you in. If you could raise your right hand and I'll have you unmute. Thank you. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony that you're going to give this court today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I swear.
All right, you may proceed.
Good afternoon, Mrs. Weirs. I would like to start off with asking you questions about your background and your education. May I have a moment to confer with co-counsel?
Sure.
Thank you. My apologies, Your Honor. We're having some technical difficulties here.
When you're ready.
Could you state your name and spell the last for the record?
My name is Dakota Weirs, Weirs.
And how old are you?
I am 20 years old.
Could you tell me a little bit about your work experience?
Well, when I was 14, I worked for Haven Landscaping as a landscaper.
And were you often working with chemicals there?
Yes, it was in the nature of my job, primarily fertilizers.
Okay. And do you still work for this landscaping company?
No, I am unable to. I am currently unemployed.
And why are you unable to?
I have cancer now.
And how has this cancer inhibited your life?
Oh, it's inhibited my life through a number of things, but if I were just to point to the physical, if I try to sit for very long, I get bruising all along my legs. I have chest pain. I have swollen lymph nodes and just severe shortness of breath.
And these specific physical symptoms that you're discussing, what have they stopped you from doing in your daily life?
Well, my daily life, it's inhibited quite a lot of it. I am mostly limited to just around my house now, but most of all, it's taken away something very special to me.
And what is that thing?
Piano.
And why is the piano important to you?
It was my connection with my late grandfather. He died when I was 7, but it kind of kept my love for him alive, and it's just very important to me.
How long have you been playing the piano?
Oh, it's been a very long time now. Ever since I was a child, I've always waddled over to that beautiful grand piano that my grandfather gave my parents when they married, and I just make up my own little songs on that. And that was all my life was.
Would you consider yourself to be a good piano player?
Well, it might sound arrogant to say it directly. I would think that I am, yes.
And what makes you say that specifically?
Before all this happened, I was going to Juilliard on a full ride scholarship for my piano playing.
And do you still plan on attending Juilliard?
No, I am unable to meet the requirements of the curriculum.
Okay. And how has this cancer affected your mental state?
It wouldn't be wrong to say I'm not doing so hot right now. I have depression.
What do you believe to be the cause of your illness?
I believe that the cause of my illness is a chemical named Drufo.
What makes you say that?
I was sitting on my couch, unfortunately common occurrence nowadays, when I noticed a news story about it on the television.
And what was the story about?
To put it bluntly, it was a scandal. An insider from the company had linked documents that contained information about Drufo and alluded to some cancerous effects.
And why is the name Drufo familiar to you?
Well, while I worked at Haven Landscaping, I often utilized a brand known as Lush Fertilizer. Within that active ingredients label that was on every bag, I often saw Drufo out of the corner of my eye when I was working with it.
And were you aware that that Drufo was cancer causing at the time you used it?
No.
Were there any measures that were put in place to prevent your illness?
Admittedly, there were. No one cared to enforce it, and no one around me wore it either. If any person was in
Objection
my
relevance.
May I have a moment to confer with co-counsel?
You may.
Thank you.
And before you do that, if I could just get clarification on the relevance objection. Remind me of the question.
The previous question, were there any safety measures?
Hold on, not for the witness to answer, for the court's clarification. What is the question?
Were there any safety measures put in place to prevent your illness?
Okay. And the objection's relevance, is that right, counsel?
Yes, it is, but towards the answer, not the question.
Okay, so is it non-responsive to the question? Do you believe that the response is going to be non-responsive?
Yes.
All right, so counsel, I'll let you confer with regards to relevance and non-responsive.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Your Honor. If you would allow my witness to answer the question, we will go specifically into the safety measures that were put in place. They just need more time to answer the question.
No, counsel, I need your response with regards to relevance and whether it was non-responsive. So what is the relevance?
May I rephrase the question?
You may. So the court will sustain the objection and permit counsel to lay further foundation.
Okay.
Or get us there.
So could you talk specifically about the prevention measures or recommendations that were put in place to prevent your illness, Mrs. Weirs?
Yes, I would like to go into that. Essentially, my boss had suggested to us several times that we should be wearing protective clothing while we worked with the fertilizer.
Okay. Could you talk more about this specific protective clothing that you were recommended to wear?
To put it simply, and I may not know the exact requirements since it's been so long, but we were told to wear covering over our faces, gloves, just long pants, long sleeves, the generalities of safety.
Okay. So now I want to get into whether or not you were warned by Lush Fertilizer or just your job. If you were given a Lush Fertilizer label, would you be able to recognize it?
Certainly.
Okay. May I ask the court to all turn their attention to Exhibit 1, including the witness?
Yes.
And do you recognize this text, Mrs. Weirs?
Yes.
What is it?
It is a Lush fertilizer ingredients label.
And where have you seen it before?
I've seen it while working with Lush in the field.
And does Exhibit 1 fairly and accurately depict how you first saw the Lush Fertilizer label?
Yes.
And have these labels ever changed throughout your work, to your knowledge?
No.
This time, Your Honor, I would like to submit Exhibit 1 into evidence.
Any objection?
No objections, Your Honor.
Exhibit 1 will be admitted.
All right, Mrs. Weirs, does this label talk specifically about safety recommendations at all?
There are a few things I can see under hazards.
And what do these hazards include?
It cautions me that it causes eye irritation, and it says to avoid contact with eyes and or clothing.
What is listed under first aid?
Simply to call a doctor for treatment advice if something happens.
Okay. And are there any warnings about Drufo or how it could possibly cause cancer?
No, all that's under the active ingredients is that it is there. It specifies nothing upon the effects that it could have, and as an uneducated consumer, I wouldn't know, to put it bluntly.
Okay, no further questions, Your Honor.
All right, cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. You have always worked for a fertilizer company,
Ever since I was 14, yes.
and your main job was spreading the fertilizer,
Along with seeds.
and you were fine with it?
It was my job and I was paid to do it, so yes.
And while you worked for this company, you used many different fertilizers, correct?
Yes, I did within the confines of the job.
Okay, now moving on. When handling the fertilizer, you were required to wear protective gear,
My boss told me to wear protective gear, yes.
which included long sleeves,
Yes,
a mask,
yes,
long pants,
yes,
and gloves.
yes,
And this was all for your safety.
Yes, for reasons I did not know of.
In fact, your boss told you to wear a mask?
Yes, he told us to wear all of the prescribed protective gear, but no one around me wore it.
And you chose to never wear the appropriate clothing?
Yes, I followed the example of those around me.
Ever?
Had other people worn protective gear, I assume I would have followed along with them because I would have figured that something that I was working with was dangerous, but I did not know that.
And you never wore the appropriate clothing?
No, because no one around me wore it.
Because it was too hot outside?
It was the summertime. Had any of you been working with me, you would have been drowning in gallons of sweat with me.
And you liked feeling the wind in your face?
It's a rather human reaction, I reckon.
And you wore shorts instead of long pants?
It was summertime.
And you wore a t-shirt instead of long sleeves?
Yes, I feel like you've asked me this several times now, so I'm not sure if I haven't been clear enough for you.
Ma'am, I'm going to ask you to answer the question.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Do you want me to re-ask it?
Yes, I would.
You wore a t-shirt instead of long sleeves?
Yes.
Your Honor, let the record reflect that I ask opposing counsel to direct their attention to what has been marked for identification purposes as Exhibit 1. And I ask that Ms. Weirs does the same.
Okay, the court will do so.
Ms. Weirs, have you seen this before?
Yes.
This is the label of the fertilizer, correct?
Yes.
And you said there weren't precautions posted?
I simply read out what was under hazards and first aid.
Yes. Will you please follow along as I read under the bold highlight user safety recommendations?
Yes.
User safety recommendations. As with any spray fertilizer, utilize protective clothing that covers exposed skin. Use of a respirator or N95 mask is recommended. Follow manufacturer's instructions for cleaning/maintaining personal protective equipment. Users should wash hands before and after use of this product. No further questions, Your Honor.
Okay. Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
All right, may this witness stand down. All right. Does the plaintiff rest?
I would like to draw Blake
Yes.
Doncourt to the stand for the defense.
Okay. I'm sorry. To the plaintiff, I presume you've rested, is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Go ahead. Sorry about that, counsel.
Sorry, Your Honor.
The remote world, so go ahead.
Please state your name and spell your last for the record.
Blake Doncourt. Doncourt.
Why are you here today, Ms. Doncourt?
I am here to defend my company, Lush Fertilizer, from the unbacked claim that we ignored a known carcinogen in our fertilizer.
How successful is your company, Ms. Doncourt?
My company is very successful. Since 2000, I have grown my company from an unknown fertilizer company to one of the largest companies in the world. So much so that we can now divert 10% of our profit to charity. We've started our own charity to clean the oceans. In 2019, we were awarded the SEAL Sustainability Award, and I myself was nominated for the Champions of the Earth Award of the United Nations in 2020.
Is there a warning on your fertilizer bag specifically for non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
No, of course not. There's no reason to put one on. There was little to no risk that our fertilizer caused that, so there was no reason to put a warning.
Is there any warning label on a bag for just general risks that any fertilizers will have?
Oh yes, certainly. Lush fertilizer is a chemical fertilizer, and so when customers use it, they must protect their skin and wear a mask and follow the safety precautions anybody would follow if they're using a chemical.
All right, let's move on to Carson Durst. Who's Carson Durst in relation to you?
Carson Durst was a family friend and was my employee for a while. I helped her get a job when she was struggling because I believed that she would be good in the field and she was a smart kid. But eventually we had to fire her after many abysmal performance reviews.
What did Miss Durst do for the company?
She was part of our research and development team. It was her job to study Drufo and warn the company of any dangers that it might pose
Hold
to
on,
our
let me
users.
to the witness. I'm having a little trouble understanding you. It's a little bit choppy. I'm not sure if is there anybody else in the room with you?
Yeah, Your Honor, we're in the same room. We've been muting ourselves back and forth. I asked maybe yesterday we had the scoring panel shut their cameras off. Maybe we could try that, and maybe that'll fix something to fix the make sure we have enough bandwidth.
Okay. Well, our preference is to leave those faces up so that we actually have a jury.
Yeah, of course.
So let me see if maybe one of you would like to turn your camera off. Let's see if that's maybe a little better.
Okay.
And then
who would you like to turn off their camera?
Whomever wants to pick. I also let me check with the witness. Where's Miss Doncourt? We get the squares moving. So let me have you speak, Miss Doncourt.
Can you hear me any better now that the attorney has turned off their camera?
Yes. So let me any plaintiff counsel. I need to be able to see defense counsel. So could one of maybe the scorers, one of the jurors, turn off their video and let's see if that helps. I don't know if it's because it's this person that's in the same room. I presume you have only one internet source. Is that right to the defense?
Yes, Your Honor.
So it may not matter. If so, Ms. Doncourt, now speak.
Can you hear me?
Yes, that's better. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Did Ms. Durst ever notify you of any risks?
No, she never did.
Do you know if she's been employed since you fired her?
Yes, she said that she is working for Terrace Greenery now.
Was Carson Durst ever obligated to any agreement before joining the company?
Yes, all of our employees need to sign a non-compete agreement to protect our company's integrity and to keep our company profitable.
All right, let's move on to specifics on your product. Does Lush bake any of their products?
No, we did not. Well, that would remove any risk that our fertilizer was carcinogenic. Since there was no risk in the first place of it being carcinogenic, there was no reason to bake it. It was simply spending money to alleviate a risk that wasn't there.
Was the profit involved at all in why you're not baking the product?
Well, certainly it was. I am running a company and I do need to keep my company profitable, but that was not the only reason. I would never wish any harm to any humans, and if there had been a danger, we certainly would have baked the fertilizer. But since there was no danger, there was no reason to spend any money that was spent needlessly on alleviating an imaginary risk.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
All right, cross-examination.
You are Blake Doncourt, correct?
Yes.
And you were aware of the little chance of risk for people using the fertilizer you market?
Yes, I was aware that there was a very small risk.
And you were also aware that Drufo was restricted in other countries?
Yes, I was.
So you believe there's no proof that your product caused Dakota's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
Yes, I do.
And do you think there is no way of knowing if any chemicals in your products are related to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
There certainly are ways of knowing. When it is tested, you find out whether it is carcinogenic or not. We found no tests that proved that Drufo was carcinogenic.
So you believe that there is no valid evidence, correct?
I do.
And do you believe that Dakota's lawyers are just trying to get rich off of some shaky science?
It would seem so. Certainly, they are trying to get money with this case, as anyone working a job is.
Objection. Question calls for speculation.
Response?
Can I have a moment to confer with co-counsel?
Yes.
Thank you. Your Honor, this is not speculation. I am just asking my witness a question that they stated in their affidavit.
The court will sustain the objection. It is speculation. So the court will strike the response.
Is it true that you hired Carson because of your relationship with him and not based on skills?
I did hire Carson because I knew her, but not only because of that. I also believed that she would do well in the job.
And you were the person to tell Carson about this opportunity?
Yes.
Is it true that you pay spousal support to your ex-spouse, Morgan?
Yes.
Objection. Relevance.
Counsel, what's the relevance?
Your Honor, the amount of money goes to Blake's credibility, and the cost of this can affect Blake's decision financially for Lush.
Overruled.
Would you like me to repeat the question, Ms. Doncourt?
No, I do pay money to my ex-spouse.
And did you save money by not baking Lush fertilizers?
Yes, I did.
And would you save 6% of your annual income in a year of not baking fertilizer, then another 2% in the following year?
Yes.
And was baking the fertilizer beneficial to remove any of the risk that your fertilizer was carcinogenic?
Yes, if there was any risk, that would certainly remove it.
And did you ever publish your financial findings?
No, I'm not aware that any company does.
And going back to your spouse's support, did the judge order you to pay a large amount per month?
Yes, but certainly not one I couldn't pay.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
All right. Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Ms. Doncourt, in your opinion as the CEO, does baking the fertilizer more reduce any risks?
No, it does not reduce any more risks because there was no risk to reduce.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Any recross based on that?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you for your time, Ms. Doncourt. The defense may call their next witness.
Your Honor, the defense calls Miss Skylar Weirs to the stand.
All right, Ms. Weirs, if you could raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're going to give the court today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I swear.
All right.
Please state your name and spell your last for the record.
Skylar Weirs, W-E-I-R-S.
What do you do for a living, Miss Weirs?
I am an investigative journalist for the Rationalist magazine.
And what is the Rationalist?
The Rationalist is a science education and advocacy magazine focused on debunking false information and pseudoscience.
And what kind of things do you write about, Miss Weirs?
I myself have primarily written on the conflict between individual health and corporate policy.
And what are some specific topics you've written on?
I was asked to write a series of articles on modern agritech, specifically Drufo, debating the causal link between Drufo and cancer.
And how long did you spend researching Drufo?
I spent a whole year reading and researching Drufo.
And can you explain to the jury what your research techniques were?
So I am a journalist, not a scientist. In my investigations, I focused on looking at what scientists in the field had to say on the subject. I looked at information put out by the United States Department of Agriculture, as well as the National Association of State Departments of Agriculture. I looked at publications put out by various companies in the field, as well as any studies mentioned in those publications. I tried to look at general knowledge as well as statistical and historical knowledge to get the best overall view of modern agritech and DRUFO as it relates to it.
Your Honor, I would like to move for the admission of this witness as an expert in modern agritech, specifically DRUFO.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
All right, and I think we can probably, let's see if we can have the jurors come back to court. All right, then she so is endorsed as an expert.
Thank you. Okay, now moving on. Who produces DRUFO?
DRUFO is produced by Lush Fertilizer.
Does anyone else?
No, it is unique to Lush Fertilizer.
And what is unique about DRUFO compared to other fertilizers?
So all agricultural products, specifically chemical ones, have some harmful elements. The goal with those products for consumer safety is to limit exposure, and DRUFO does that.
And how does it do that?
Compared to other fertilizers, DRUFO has to be applied much less often to be effective. 1 to 2 times a year, perhaps, whereas other fertilizers have to be applied multiple times a year in order to work.
And is there anything else unique about DRUFO?
DRUFO is an effective pesticide on its own, meaning consumers do not have to apply additional pesticides on top of their fertilizers already.
And are there any benefits to using DRUFO instead of those other pesticides?
The most common other pesticides, like arsenic or glyphosate, are proven and known carcinogens. They are poison. DRUFO has no proven general link to cancer, making it safer.
And finally, in your expert opinion, whom do you think is to blame for causing Dakota's non-Hodgkin lymphoma?
So while DRUFO is certainly one of the fertilizer agents that Dakota Weirs used, I really think that it's on the company that hired Dakota and did not enforce using proper protective gear with any number of fertilizers and chemical products. We shouldn't really be looking at Lush Fertilizer here.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Mrs. Weirs. I would first like to start with asking you questions about your background and your education. Is it correct that you write for the Rationalist magazine?
It is correct.
And this magazine publishes articles that relate to science, correct?
Yes,
And isn't it true that you strive to provide accurate information in your articles?
always.
And without that accurate information, your articles would be considered unreliable. Isn't that correct?
Of course. That's what journalism is.
And you do not possess a college degree, do you?
I do not.
In fact, you don't have any formal education past high school, correct?
No, I wanted to work on my writing.
Or any formal education specifically in the field of agri-science, correct?
No formal education, though I did a great deal of research.
Do you have any peer-reviewed articles?
No, like I said, I'm a journalist.
Are there any records of your research other than what you say you have researched?
No.
Now I'd like to move on to your findings on these fertilizers. Pesticides and herbicides, such as the ones used by Lush Fertilizer, are defined as poisonous, right?
Yes.
And because they are defined as poisonous, that means there will probably never be a chemical fertilizer that is truly safe, correct?
No, from any company.
So then, other than you claiming that these articles are credible, is there any way to verify that for sure?
You mean the articles from the USDA and the NASDA?
Was all of your research done from those two sources?
Primarily, and by companies in the field who would be the authority on the subject.
So when you say primarily, that means there were secondary sources you used, correct?
Of course, you have
And-
to look at all the information.
Okay. Now I'd like to get into your relationship with the plaintiff and your financial situation. Isn't it true that you are Dakota Weirs' brother?
Yes,
Sister?
I'm her sister.
And you and Dakota don't have a stereotypically close relationship, isn't that correct?
No, not like other twins.
Is it also true that one of your sources of income comes from writing from the Rationalist?
Yes,
And isn't it true that you don't make very much money off these articles?
no, I have to work another job on the side.
And isn't it true that that other job is being a part-time server at Applebee's?
Yes,
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, any redirect based on that?
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, may this witness stand down. The defense may call their last witness.
The defense calls Dr. Devin Williams to the stand.
Dr. Williams, if you could raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're giving this court today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Right? You may inquire.
Please state your name and spell your last for the record.
Devin Williams, Williams.
Dr. Williams, what is your job?
I lead the research and development team at Lush Fertilizer, and I'm the outgoing chair of the company's ethics committee.
How long have you worked at Lush Fertilizer?
I've been there for about 10 years and have led the toxicology labs for 7.
Could you explain what this job entails?
Well, yes. It means that I work to understand the outdoor world and how it will respond to outside influences like our fertilizer.
What training led you to this job at Lush Fertilizer?
My undergraduate at Colorado State University, my PhD, and my postdoctorate, which are detailed in my CV.
Dr. Williams, could you direct your attention to what has been previously marked as Exhibit 9? Opposing counsel, please direct your attention to what has been previously marked as Exhibit 9. Dr. Williams, do you recognize this exhibit?
I
So
do.
hold on, plaintiff. I think I see you talking. I'm not sure if you're trying to talk to the court, but we can't hear you.
No, Your Honor, I'm sorry, I apologize.
All right, go ahead, counsel.
Dr. Williams, do you recognize this exhibit?
I do.
What is this document?
It is my curriculum vitae, or CV.
Is this a fair and accurate representation of your CV?
It is.
Does it properly list all your education and experience?
Yes.
Your Honor, I move the court to enter Exhibit 9 into evidence.
Any objection to Exhibit 9?
Yes, Your Honor. Objection to relevance and bolstering.
Response?
Your Honor, the witness needs to have their entire credit, their entire education and publications listed out in order for the court to understand their expertise in the field.
The court will allow it. Counsel, you got muted there at the end. The court will overrule the objection. Exhibit 9 is admitted.
Dr. Williams, could you give a list of the highlights of your education?
I could. I have a specialized postdoctorate in pharmacotoxicology, or the pharmaceutical effects of drugs on humans. I also have various accreditations in Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, and Wyoming, and I have been working in the field for a long time.
Dr. Williams, do you have any publications?
I do, such as the forensic aspects of poisons.
What other professional experience do you have?
Well, as I mentioned, I have my experience in the field in researching and evaluating test results to determine the effects of toxins.
What has this training allowed you to do at Lush?
It helps me to postulate as to the broader effects of our fertilizer on the outdoor world.
Could you explain what that means to the jury?
Yes, That means that I can determine whether or not something in our fertilizers would be harmful to the human body and how to neutralize harmful effects if they were to occur.
Your Honor, I move the court to recognize Dr. Devin Williams as an expert in chemical toxicology, pharmacology, and research and development processes at Lush Fertilizer.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
All right, that she will so be accepted by the court.
How were you introduced to Drufo?
I was introduced when about half of the research and development team had already moved on from the company.
Could you explain why Drufo is used in fertilizer?
Yes, Drufo is used in fertilizer because it bonds specially to the grass or substances it is sprayed on to prevent eutrophication.
What problem did Drufo solve from prior fertilizers?
Drufo solved the problem of excess nitrate runoff.
Counsel, I can't hear you.
Sorry, why did that process lead to the development of Drufo?
That process led to the development of Drufo because other fertilizers, nitrates, were running off due to rainwater and ending up in bodies of water and killing fish and allowing harmful algae to bloom. Drufo, because of the way it bonds to the grass, does not allow this.
Why is Drufo so revolutionary?
It's revolutionary because it prevents eutrophication, which is the excess runoff of nitrates I just explained, and is therefore better for the environment.
And why is Drufo banned in the EU?
It's banned in the EU because in tests, Drufo can be manipulated to show the same amount of nitrate runoff as other fertilizers and is therefore no different in tests.
And why is it banned in smaller countries such as Haiti or Liberia?
They unfortunately don't usually have the money to test for themselves, so they go by whatever the EU says.
Why didn't Lush Fertilizer fight the EU's decision if it has no concrete scientific proof?
They didn't fight the decision because they were a very young company and it wasn't worth the argument.
Does Lush plan to contest that decision in the future?
Yes.
Is there any study that proves Drufo causes lymphoma?
No.
Did you hear Dr. Rogers' experiment earlier today?
I did.
Could you explain his experiment?
Yes, he tested 3 separate groups of people to see who would develop different types of diseases based on their exposure to Drufo.
Were there any problems with his experiment?
Yes, because Dr. Rogers was looking only at Drufo, her results were biased from the beginning. You have to compare like things to like things, such as other fertilizers to fertilizers containing Drufo.
And can you explain how Dr. Rogers may have found that some groups still got non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
Yes, well, statistically, any number of people could potentially develop non-Hodgkin's lymphoma using Drufo or not, because of that, we can't tell whether or not Drufo was the cause or it was something else.
And what could bad comparisons lead to in statistics?
Bad comparisons in statistics lead to biased results.
In your expert opinion, did Drufo cause the defendant's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
Absolutely not. It's very sad that Ms. Weirs has developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, but it was not as a result of Drufo.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Cross-examination.
Give me 1 second, please.
Sure.
Alrighty. Isn't it true that you took the lead on the labs at Lush Fertilizer?
Yes.
And you admitted in your affidavit that you do have a financial bias in the outcome of this case, correct?
I do.
And the decision made today will impact the company's ability to sell Lush products in the future, correct?
It could potentially.
And depending on the outcome of this case today, you could significantly lose quite a bit, correct?
Yes, potentially.
You could financially benefit from the outcome, correct?
Yes,
And you could even have a loss of professional reputation from this, correct?
perhaps.
That is all, Your Honor.
All right, any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Would you ever allow financial bias to determine your decision in a case such as this?
Absolutely not. Trufo would not have gone out on the market unless we knew that it was safe.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Any recross based on that?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Dr. Williams, you're free to leave. Are the parties ready to make closing statements?
Yes, Your Honor, I apologize. Sorry.
That's okay. It's the technical world. And on behalf of the defense, is the defense ready, or do they need a minute?
I'm ready, Your Honor.
Okay. All right. Counsel, you may proceed.
Before we begin, Your Honor, I ask that if there is any time left over, may I use that time for rebuttal?
Yes.
Thank you. If you cause the cancer, you will catch the consequences. Today, you heard the painful, heartbreaking story of Dakota Weirs and what Lush Fertilizer Incorporation did to her. Lush Fertilizer had a duty, which was to manufacture a fertilizer product which contained a chemical compound known as Drufo. Drufo was explained to be a chemical makeup of a fertilizer that Lush's research and development team made up, but that team ignored that Drufo is a harmful substance to the people who use it. Drufo was rushed to the market without sufficient studies on its safety. Dr. Casey Rogers said today that each product Lush Fertilizer has sent out contains Drufo. This team has failed to make sure that the product will not cause damages. Lush Fertilizer has failed to exercise their duty of care. And the direct cause of this was that Drufo has direct links to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and various cancers. You heard today from Dr. Rogers that people exposed to Drufo on an occasional basis were 5 times more likely to be diagnosed with cancer and even 10 times more likely to be diagnosed with cancer with prolonged exposure to Drufo. My client, Dakota Weirs, spent years around this product. Anyone working in the agriculture industry will use this product, and Lush knew that. Lush knows that many people, from businesses to homeowners that take care of their yards, and are willing to put their own customers that they care about at risk for non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Mrs. Weirs will never get the life she was supposed to have. Mrs. Weirs should be at Juilliard right now. But instead, she is sitting in a courtroom living the rest of her life with this cancer. Mrs. Weirs had to give up her full-ride scholarship to Juilliard and is now giving up the legacy of her grandfather. But now we ask you, the jury, to find that Lush Fertilizer was negligent. The future that Mrs. Weirs is supposed to have was priceless. But how do we put a number on these types of things? But I will give you a suggestion for $10 million in award for damages. In the last hour, you heard multiple witnesses testify. First off, you heard from Dr. Casey Rogers. Dr. Rogers testified today on how harmful and dangerous Drufo is to the human body. She conducted her own study to see how dangerous Drufo is, and the results were more than enough proof. The amount of times that Mrs. Weirs spent around Drufo caused her to be 10 times more likely than the average person to be diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. You then heard from Carson Durst, who told you how she was an employee for Lush and how she found further research on how dangerous Drufo is, but Lush continued to ignore this. This proves how negligent Lush was with their products. Mrs. Durst was the only one concerned with Drufo and took it up with product manager Jerry Langley, who pushed it to the side and never took these studies seriously. These studies consisted of Drufo being banned in France due to how unsafe it was. There is another reason on why Lush is negligent. Finally, Dakota Weirs took the stand, and you heard the heart-rending life story of her and how it all came to a fall because of Lush. You heard how Mrs. Weirs was very active in her community and how she had a beautiful talent for the piano and was ready to leave for Juilliard, but that future was all washed away due to the negligence of Lush Fertilizer. On the defendant's side, you heard from Blake Doncourt, who has a personal issue with money and would rather keep the money than going through correct procedures to take care of their products. We want you, the jury, to notice how the success and money of Lush is threatened by this lawsuit. You must look at the financial aspect. We established today that most of the defendants in this case will have a financial bias towards the outcome today. You then heard from Skylar Weirs, who is a self-proclaimed expert with no college experience, no formal education or training in the area of Drufo, and has no ties to Lush Fertilizer Corporation in this matter today. Mrs. Weirs is just here talking about the research that she has done, but has zero records and zero peer reviews on these topics. She may not be a credible source for this matter today. It was all based on what she has to say about herself. So why should the jury believe Skylar Weirs when there is zero evidence on the research she did? You finally you heard from Dr. Devin Williams, who said today that she has a financial bias on the outcome of this case and works for Lush. Depending on the outcome of this case, Dr. Williams will either financially benefit or have a loss of reputation. This proves Lush just worries about the money. With all this to be considered, my team has proved by preponderance of the evidence that Lush Fertilizer was negligent. We thank you for your time today and listening to both sides equally.
Thank you, counsel. Counsel for the defense.
Thank you, Your Honor. Lush's warnings were thrown to the wind. We have heard about the plaintiff's blatant disregard to follow any safety precautions. She, despite the warning of her gardening company, chose to not use any protective equipment because she was drowning in gallons of sweat. She was swayed by the decisions of others around her in her negligence and blames these colleagues and her boss for the decisions she herself made. For this, she suffered the sad consequences. These consequences being the horrible condition of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Despite this horrible outcome, it was the plaintiff's decision, though, to not cover up her skin and instead let her hair flow in the wind. Lush's warnings were thrown to the wind. First, we heard from Ms. Doncourt, who is a hardworking entrepreneur and eventually an owner of the successful company Lush Fertilizer, made it evidently clear that she had pure intentions and would never purposely neglect the warning label on the back of the package for Drufo. In fact, it was shown in Exhibit 1 to you all, the jury. Next, we heard from Skylar Weirs, an expert and the plaintiff's own sister. Even she was against her sister because she knows the accusations from her against Lush are not true. It was not Lush that caused the non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, just that the warnings were thrown to the wind. Lastly, we heard from Dr. Devin Williams, an accomplished expert in toxicology who has studied Drufo and the effects of it. She tells us how it is good for the environment and shows us Ms. Doncourt's pure intentions and environmental concerns, which she was helping to fix with Drufo in the first place. She brings up how Drufo is banned in the EU, but the reason for this is because the EU is more specific on what new fertilizers are allowed and not based purely on the appearance of Drufo in the fertilizer. She also referred to Dr. Casey Rogers' experiment and how it did not connect like things in her expert opinion. Comparing dissimilar things leads to biased results. Most importantly, she states how Drufo did not cause the cancer in her expert opinion. In our cross-examination, first we heard from Ms. Durst. As a former employee, she was subject to a non-compete agreement by the company that she worked for, which is a common idea for big companies like this. But Ms. Durst found it unimportant and violated this agreement she signed at the start of her career at Lush. Ms. Durst betrays her own old friend, Ms. Doncourt. Ms. Doncourt provided for Ms. Durst and welcomed her into her family when she was in need, not because she was obligated to, but because she cared and she was a good person. She repaid her by violating this agreement. This is not all that Ms. Durst did, though. She also lied about an email supposedly sent to Ms. Doncourt about the Drufo being harmful. This was proved to be a lie when Ms. Doncourt herself admitted she had never seen the email before, and even if she did not recall it, the lawyers who searched Lush's email database found no evidence of it ever having been sent. Next, you heard from Dr. Casey Rogers, who supposedly conducted an experiment to test how harmful Drufo can be, but none of it was recorded or entered into evidence. Even if it was, it connected the idea of a higher risk of cancer with farmers more than it did with actual Drufo or even Lush Fertilizer itself. This means it is inconclusive that it is purely luscious fertilizer that can be harmful and fails to rule out other fertilizers. Expert or not, she identified the most easy way to get non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is to breathe in something harmful or absorb it through one's skin. These are both activities done by the plaintiff quite frequently due to the choice to not use facial and respiratory protection and skin protection. This is exactly the advice used in a warning of Lush Fertilizer's own fertilizer bag, which Ms. Weirs used so much of. Dakota Weirs pleaded her case of Lush lacking accountability and neglecting a warning on the bag of its fertilizer. The real truth behind this is that Lush has a warning, but not for cancer, because there's no risk of cancer deriving from the fertilizer in all of their expert opinions. The plaintiff's ignorance and neglect of harmful chemicals and their presence in the fertilizer she was using every day for multiple years is really what makes it apparent that Lush is not responsible. She based her original evidence of Drufo on a, quote, scandal on TV. I ask that you, the jury, find Lush Fertilizer and the defense not guilty. Once again, and for the last time, Lush's warnings were thrown to the wind. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. Normally, I would tell the jury to leave, and I would let them deliberate. But was there something that I missed? Because we are ahead of time, it appears. No, we're okay? Okay, so can we start feedback now?
Your Honor, may I
Absolutely.
ask the last 10 seconds for rebuttal?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Go ahead, counsel. Yes, always correct the judge when they're wrong. Go ahead.
Thank you. Lush's warnings were thrown in the wind, but it was the money that was thrown in the wind. We are here today because Lush decided to save money by not baking the fertilizer. Now Dakota suffers from their consequences.
I heard the chime as you finished, so thank you very much. Wow, this is my first time being on this end of moot court, and you guys have done a remarkable job. I can honestly say that it is perhaps some of the better lawyering that I've seen in my courtroom. So I appreciate that. I appreciate all the effort that you all did. Can we just go really quickly? I'm not sure if the scores need the names because we had the names of the team beforehand, and then sometimes we have plaintiff or defense. I'm not sure that we necessarily got all the names. Do the scores need me to make sure that we outline the names for each portion, or do you guys have it? All right. Okay. So Tammy, I see a thumbs up. I take that to mean you have it. Is that right? Okay. So let's start with the openings. Any thoughts on the openings? I'll go to the jurors first. The most important people in the room. Yeah, go ahead. Let's start with Miss Robin or Miss Jordan, Mr. Courtroom, and then Tammy. I'm not sure of your last name.
Sure thing. I think, is it Abriana? Yes, you did your opening. I love that catchphrase. Cause the cancer, catch the consequences. So many cuz. I love it. That was really catchy, and it really set the scene for the case. I thought that was great. I really like that you defined what a preponderance of the evidence is. As jurors, we don't necessarily know that. We're probably the exception because we're attorneys, but you explained what that meant, and that was important for me. So overall, really, really great job.
Mr. Courtroom?
I would agree. I think, can everybody hear me all right? I don't know if these headphones are working, but okay, cool. So I agree with pretty much everything you said. I thought that Ms. Gonzalez, I thought your opening was very well done. I thought that it was, it kind of touched on emotion, but it wasn't emotionally charged. And I thought that was very, very well done. I think that it was exceptional. I really do.
Tammy?
Hi. So I'm just going to give you a little background. I'm actually a mock trial coach from Nebraska. Things that I noticed were probably a lot different than what the lawyers noticed. Pronouns, guys, pronouns. Be sure that you have the correct pronoun. When you're objecting, wait for the judge. Okay, wait for the judge to give you those kind of directions. And most of you were great. slow down and be careful if you're reading something. I caught some of you reading, and that's just a coach thing because we were virtual. And so we practiced my lawyer coach and I practiced with our kids, and we could tell when they were reading. So just be very careful of that if you move on. Otherwise, you guys, you blew Nebraska's mock trial teams out of the water. You did an awesome job.
And I noticed during your opening that you gave me the roadmap, which as a judge, people assume that the judges know what's going on in the case, and I really don't. I really don't have all the information that you guys have. So I thought your roadmap was really, really helpful. And you started off seeming very nervous, but it seemed like you got comfortable in a split second, and then you were off to the races. So I think you did a really great job. This was a tough case. So let's go on to the opening for the defense. Mr. Aero, do we have enough time to be able to go piece by piece?
Yes, you do.
Okay, thank you. So let's go on to the opening for the defense. Ms. Jordan.
Sure. So I will say again, that roadmap piece was hugely important. Who is who and what's going on? That was major, and you nailed that. You did a really good job with that. In terms of being persuasive, I was persuaded. I didn't know who to go for. I thought both sides did really well, but the defense's opening was really strong as well.
Mr. Krum, with regards to the defense's opening.
Yeah, so I think especially after that one, you have a tough spot, right? Because sympathy is certainly not on your side. But I thought that you did a very good job of being very matter of fact, kind of talking about all of the other factors that were at play. And then I think at the end, I believe it was at the end, I think you did a very good job of kind of addressing how, like, we're all very sorry that we're here, and this is not, what anybody wants. And I think that you kind of watered it down a smidgen, which I think was super helpful for your side.
Tammy?
I thought that defense was so relaxed and knew the case, knew what they wanted to get across. So great job.
And I'll say with regard to the defense, your delivery was very logical to me. You were speaking to me as a juror and using more of those layman terms. I loved that all warnings were thrown to the wind, which was the theme that your team then wove through the rest of it. When you wrote that this case was brought because of money-hungry lawyers, I realized I'm usually in court, I'm wearing a mask now, and I have only been appointed to the bench for a year, and I can see myself kind of responding to that. So I got to work on my poker face as well, but that certainly was like, oh, I wish I could see their expressions when he said that, just to see the response. So you certainly got that response. So great job. Let's go to the first witness, Dr. Rogers, Casey Rogers, and the direct by Michaela.
So, Ms. Rogers, I thought you were a great witness, very believable. How do you pronounce your last name, Michaela?
It's Mungia.
Mungia, okay. Thank
Sorry.
you. No, you're okay.
It's Mungia.
Ms. Mungia, you had a very pointed direct, I thought. I thought that you elicited her testimony in a really, really good way. You were getting out the information that we needed. And then again, our witness, very believable. I thought it was just really great.
I agree. I thought the questioning, kind of the order and the kind of the pace of it all, I thought was great. I thought that, so I have a good props for the direct. I thought it was I think the question, though, logical progression of the questions was very well done as well. The witness, Dr. Rogers, I thought was great. I thought you were very animated in a sense, and it kind of like played into a lot of your testimony. So I thought that was very well done and very believable as well.
Go ahead, Tammy. Oh, I think you're muted, Tammy. It's like the catchphrase of the year. Go ahead.
I agree with the animation. Am I there now?
Yes.
Okay. I agree with the animation. It really added to your witness part. You stayed that witness, and that was really important for you. And good job.
I echo the witness was very believable and almost snooty, but to the appropriate degree, because you want your witnesses to be confident, and she was confident when she's like, I have a degree and I have 2 degrees, and by the way, one's from Berkeley, which was good. And Michaela, I wrote down that you pivoted really well. There was an objection that I sustained, and when the things are happening in a split second, it's very hard to pivot, but you took that. And the defense, I was trying to kind of feed the defense an objection, and they didn't take it, but you heard that and used it to pivot, which is very difficult to do, especially in a trial and in a mock trial competition and things like that. So that was really well done.
Thank you, guys.
Yes. So let's go to the defense.
Thank you so much.
The defense of cross of Dr. Rogers. Ms. Jordan.
So pointed, very focused. You knew exactly what you were asking and what information you were trying to elicit. You were making it clear for us what holes you were trying to poke into the witness's testimony. And I really noted that on your performance actually throughout the entire trial. Very pointed, very focused, and very precise.
I agree. I think you knew exactly kind of the areas of weakness, and you got kind of straight to them. And I think that when you are kind of efficient and you don't do too much in cross, I think it's always very effective. And I thought that yours was very well done.
Tammy?
I agree. You were very effective. Your questions just followed the pattern. And like the judge said, I didn't get to read the case, and you were just perfect when it came to asking those questions. Good job.
And I echo much of the sentiment of the jurors. I said, great job in getting straight to the heart of the weakness of the witness. One thing I would suggest for you also have a very good demeanor with regards to your objections and your timing of objections, which is a very difficult skill to hone. You need to be able to give them enough for there to be a valid objection and to create that record without letting it go too far. I would just say to since you have that skill down, I would take it to the next level and be asking to strike. So it frustrates me to no end that the jury just heard something that's a very objectionable, but the witness doesn't, or the attorney doesn't ask me to strike it and instruct the jurors, like, don't listen to what was just said, which now makes your objection a lot more powerful than it ever was. So I think you can go to that next step of skill in your objections. So great job.
Thank you so much.
Yes. And then
To
we
everyone.
have, yes. And Miss Durst. Miss Durst, we got a lot for you. You were difficult. That was a difficult witness to play. Go ahead, Miss Jordan.
Yes, I would agree. But I thought you did it flawlessly. I thought you did it so incredibly well. The direct was great. I mean, I really don't have many critiques. It was really impressive. So very believable. Very good job, Ms. Gonzalez. Yeah, just all around impressed.
I agree. I think this was it was a great job. I thought that the direct again was very I think the order of the questions was very well done, and kind of like making your plan of how you were going to get everything out. I thought the witness did very well. It felt like you were very prepared to be the witness, and I thought that was pretty evident as well. So I think you both did great.
Tammy?
I'm just mimicking what everybody else said. You guys were well prepared. Timing between you and the cross and things like that were excellent. Just remember to keep up those pauses.
And I would echo you guys. You guys stuck out as being really well prepared together and meshing together, which should be a natural progression for your witness, that you almost knew what she was going to say before she said it. And I thought the council did a really good job of towing that line of expert and making certain that they're getting the same, that they're getting all of the information out. Some of it I was like, oh, where this is coming on to an expert and this isn't on, this is a fact witness. But you did a really good job of towing that line, which is sometimes very difficult to do. So let's move on to the cross of Miss Durst, which went straight for the jugular.
That's exactly what I was going to say. It was incredibly, I mean, I've said pointed, I keep saying pointed, but it was just very focused, very, very focused. And you really went for it too. You were unapologetic in eliciting the information that you wanted and poking holes in that story. So really good job.
I agree with all of that, but you know, you didn't come off as like rude or anything like that, which I think is pretty tough to do when you are kind of coming at someone's credibility in that way. And I thought that you balanced that of you know, I'm not rude, you're just not credible, and I thought that you kind of highlighted that, and I thought that was a great job.
Again, I'm just mimicking. Great job. Your points were to the question. The questions were to the point, and you really knocked it out of the ballpark. Good job.
I would echo that. I put wrote down attacking credibility right away, which woke me up, and that it wasn't just the fact that you were attacking credibility, it was the demeanor with which you did it. And I agree with Mr. Courtroom. It was not rude in any way. It was, and I think how you did it was with your emphasis on certain words. So I wrote, that study was on rats. So your emphasis of the word rats, where I was like, oh, he's not messing around with Miss Durst here. So I think you have a really good knack of figuring out where to put that emphasis to wake me up and really catch my attention as a judge. And I wanted to see how Miss Durst was going to respond to that with trying to have a poker face, of course. Okay, next we have Dakota Wares. We had this is the time when we had a little bit of technical issues, but I felt like everybody handled it very well. Do we have counsel? Let's start with the witness. So Miss Jordan, no worries.
What a witness. My goodness. Do they give Oscars out for mock trial? Because if so, take it. Yeah, you were great. You were very believable. You were not having any of anybody's stuff either. You're like, so, and yeah, you were great. Really, really great witness. The direct as well, you handled that witness. You did a really, really great job. So congratulations on that, because she was not easy, I don't think. But you elicited your information. You were able to pull out the story. You guys both did a really great job.
I agree. I think in a case like this, I think, you know, this is you know, going to be the most important witness pretty much when it comes down to it. I thought that you, as the witness, really kind of owned the role, like everybody's saying. You know, I was like, I kind of believed it, you know, like I was feeling pretty sympathetic for you. I thought that the questioning was great. I mean, I will say that during that technical glitches and stuff and how well everybody handled it, I think that showed a good composure, and that you were prepared. You knew what you were doing, and it didn't really throw you off, which I think is pretty impressive, because I think we all can speak to that it has a tendency to throw people off a lot. So I think the way that you guys handled that was pretty impressive.
So I think your character was so believable, and you stayed in that character. It was amazing. As a one-act play director, I'd want you in my play any day. Keep that work up. You were great. Mr. Lawyer, make sure you pause. there were a couple of questions you didn't quite pause and she was already answering the questions, but you have a strong, strong lawyer voice and it was great. Okay.
I echo the witness. I was like, oh, this is kind of giving me goosebumps. I could really imagine these facts and circumstances from Dakota's position, which is exactly your intention. And I thought the two of you did really well together. Counsel, you did a couple of things really well. One of them was I wrote down that you gave your witness space to have that emotion. So I think, yes, I know that it's different in time constraints, although not necessarily, because I also will keep you on track of a time. But I think there was a lot of times where you allowed her to have that feeling, which sometimes is very uncomfortable to let that space happen. You took the technical issues in stride. And then two technical issues I think you did really well in counsel is that when I sustained an objection, you asked if you could rephrase. And that was a really good way of telling the jurors like, hey, okay, I'm accepting what the judge said, but I'm still gonna keep trying. And you did a really good job with that. You also did it when you introduced Exhibit 1, accurately reflect, right? That phrase gives you a lot of testimony, especially laying foundation for an exhibit that than asking a multitude of questions. Does that accurately reflect it? And that's also an indicator to counsel and to the court, like, oh, we're going to have an exhibit admission here in a minute, so now I can really pay attention. So you did really well in that respect.
Thank you, ma'am.
And the cross of Dakota.
You caught me off guard. I didn't know you were going to be such a bulldog. It was pretty awesome. Really good job. You were very exacting. You knew what you were asking and you went for it. It was a really, really impressive job.
I agree. I think, and I don't remember kind of the exact questioning, but it was, when you were kind of harping on you weren't wearing your protective clothing, and the witness was like, well, nobody was wearing it. Oh, and you didn't, you didn't kind of like turn to the judge for help, or you just kind of like stayed the course and you just kind of kept it. And I felt like that exchange really, really highlighted that, like, hey, we told you to wear that stuff and you didn't do it. And I think that you kind of kept a really solid demeanor with not the most of direct answers, which I think was a great job. And I think that it also played into the witness. I think just kind of owning the role, and I think that's how it goes a lot of times. Is that you don't exactly get an answer, you may get an explanation to what the answer pretty obviously is, but the way you kind of stayed on it was very good.
Tammy?
I loved the way that you brought in Exhibit 1 and you called the us to let's look at the user's safety recommendations. Great job. You just bulldogged it through and it was great. Good job.
That was really great. I actually wrote that down as well, that you were using their exhibit, which showed that you weren't scared of it and you drew our attention to the exact spot that you should have. And that was really effective. You have a really strong demeanor. And there were a few times where I actually kind of jumped because you were so loud, which may not happen when we're all wearing headphones, but in a courtroom, it's fantastic because it shows that you are using your space, that you're confident in using your space, and it woke people up, it'll wake people up. But also you temper that with slowing it down. So you showed us a broad range, I think, of demeanor, and you were properly a bulldog when you needed to be. And then you were a little kinder and gentler when you needed to be. So I thought you did a really great job. And I don't mean to say that bulldog is negative in any way. It's just a personality type. I had that in trial as a trial counsel as well. And you have to go with who you are, but you were able to temper that, which was very effective. So great job.
Thank you.
And Ms. Doncourt. towards our next witness.
Yes, I thought you were very, very believable as your witness. And I think that it's important to say that being a good witness makes you a good attorney, because you are bringing forth the information that everybody needs to know, but you're also not too forthcoming in that you're just handing everybody the answer. So I thought you did a really, really good job.
I agree. I think extremely believable as a witness. I think one thing that between the direct and the witness that you guys both did well was really owning the not baking it or baking the fertilizer, right? Where we're like, well, why would we? We didn't have a risk. And I think you kind of knew that was going to be something that you were going to get attacked on cross, and you kind of took a lot of the sting out of it by addressing it first. So I think great job on including that as part of your direct, and then the witness did a good job on owning that as well.
You two work so well together. You are a very believable witness, very you're not going to get the best of me in this. And that's the kind of attitude that this kind of witness would have, because they own their own company. They have to be confident. Very, very nice. And sir, very good attorney wise. You asked those questions to pull from your witness. Good job.
Going last, I always get to echo, but I wrote down running to the bad evidence, which is really helpful. You got it out and you confronted it before it was thrown, which helps me think that you're not deceitful. I did not think that you would have the ability to be able to humanize this particular witness the way that you did, and you did. I'm not sure how, but you did. I was like, I feel a little bad for Doncor. Like, come on. At the time. So I thought that one of the best questions that you had that really stuck with me was, does the warning label have non-Hodgkin's lymphoma on it? And having that explanation where I was like, well, yeah, that sounds reasonable, right? The opening woven, what would a reasonable person do? So that, again, just weaving that through, running to the bad evidence. I'm not sure how you humanized this witness, but you did. So very effective. I don't mean any disrespect, Ms. Doncor.
Thank you.
All right. And the cross of Doncor.
Yeah, so you had quite the job here. It was this witness, it's huge. And I thought that you really poked holes really well. I thought that you had her having to explain herself really well. Overall, I thought you were incredibly focused, very poised. You have a certain poise about you that I really respect, that I can probably use in my own practice. That's why I keep doing this, is because I learn from you guys all the time. And yeah, that composure, I was really impressed by your composure.
I would totally agree. I thought the composure and all of that, couldn't agree more. I thought it was very, very well done. I think that you really launched into a lot of credibility around finances, which I think was kind of, it helped kind of balance out what just happened because exactly like the judge said, I was kind of like, oh, this poor company, this isn't fair. But then you made it like, oh well, yeah, this probably is a big deal for them money wise, right? So I think how you kind of shifted that focus back on you have an awful lot to lose here was great.
I totally agree. You just really put it out there. You asked the right questions at the right time in the right order. Great presence.
I agree. You seemed very comfortable with this witness, which was strange considering the circumstances, but I could tell that you were incredibly prepared to go after this witness's weaknesses. And I agree, you made her do some fancy footwork with regards to things, and you did all of that by having this very calm demeanor that kind of showed to me that, oh, okay, she's got this. Like, whether it was no matter what was coming out of Ms. Duncourt's mouth, I felt calm about whatever the response was because that's how you were acting. So I think you did a really great job in that respect. One of the things I would say is I think the redirect, which was like the single question that everything boiled down to, which was, does baking reduce any more risk? I would have suggested that you respond to that in some way, like, right, how do you know that? And you may not have wanted to run the risk because, like I said, I don't know the whole case file and there may be some things down there that you don't want to avoid. But if there is, if there would have been something for you to have the final word on that, I think you could have gone for it. But I also see if there was a risk there that was a calculation maybe that you chose, and probably maybe a strategy for your team. But great job. Witness Skylar, the twin sister.
Yes, Ms. Schuyler, you stood up to that cross-examination like a boss. Like you weren't having any of it. That was really impressive to me. Really believable character. Your witness was just pretty much flawless. You know, and the direct examination, you elicited what you needed to. You really wove the story. It was really, really awesome to watch.
I agree. I think the witness was super believable. I think that one thing about the direct and the witness, it made it really that the formal education didn't seem like it really mattered that much. And you guys did a really good job of that being a pretty big hole as being an expert, right? And you guys really owned it and made it feel, to me at least, like pretty insignificant. Like, oh, well, you have a cheat note, so it doesn't matter. She doesn't have it. So I think that the way that you guys handled that weakness was very well done.
So I think you did a great job. You stayed in character. You kind of had that, I don't care if she is my sister, I know what I'm talking about. And that's exactly what you needed. You did a great job.
I agree. So great layman. You guys did a layman foundation that got me the layman facts that I needed from this particular witness that made me not care at all when they said, you don't have an education. That I at that point, I didn't really care because I'm like, well, she don't really need it. She already has a lot of information. So it was a really great job. The cross of, how are we on time? I'm not sure if Mr. Stray Rose here. Are we doing?
So far, you're fine. We're not going to start again until 2. So you have
Okay, we can
5-10 more minutes.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you. So let's do the cross of Skylar. No fertilizer safe.
No, exactly. Yeah, difficult witness to work with. And that's something that I am still learning how to deal with all the time. Like, that's not what I wanted you to say. Just say what I want you to say. But you did a really, really good job in maneuvering around that and redirecting and refocusing. You were very composed as well. You kept focused. And for me, that's one of the hard things for me to do is keep focused. I get flustered entirely too easily, but you are pretty unflappable, sir. So congratulations on that.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think the way that you handled a witness that wasn't really going to give you anything easy, for sure. And I think that you handled it pretty well. I think that the way that they owned some stuff made it tough for you to kind of impeach. But I think that you brought it up, but you didn't really harp on it. And I think that was good. I think it was probably, or at least I would imagine, a little bit of an urge to try to overcombat that, right? Like, no, this isn't like this is a big deal. You don't have it. And I think that you touched on it, but you didn't go too far down that rabbit hole. I think that was you did a good job.
Again, you're a very believable lawyer. I really hope that you pursue this as a career. You were great controlling your witness. Good job.
And I have that the witness could be a little snarky, and your response to that was professionalism, which in particular gets you points with the judge, because we've all been in that situation where the witness is not giving them the testimony that they want. And you handled it really, really well to be able to just keep harping on the same questions, but in a really like calm, professional way. So great job. Dr. Devin Williams.
Dr. Williams, you did such a great job. Incredibly believable. You kind of make me think of me in a way where we come off very sweet and very kind, and then also secretly you really pack a punch, which is great. So don't hesitate to lean into that a little bit, because I think that that is your superpower.
I thought that this direct and the witness, I think that the back and forth that you guys had was great. It felt very, very conversational, very easy to kind of stay engaged to it. I think that the doctor did a great job. I think that what you guys did a really good job of, to me, was let's go back to the to Dr. Rogers, right? And let's kind of just blow all that up that you heard before. And I think that the way that you guys kind of went through everything and then kind of got to that, I thought that was all very well done. I thought the line of questioning was great. And I thought the witness was very believable.
I want you to come back to Nebraska and do one act. You two are great. You stayed in character. You knew what you needed to do to be that character. Awesome job, you two. I really enjoyed your performance.
Yes, you not only you gave me some facts that I didn't know, and then you built it up in a way that made it very logical for me to piece all of it together. And then I also wrote that down about Dr. Rogers. I was like, oh, now talking smack about Dr. Rogers' opinion and why it's biased, which is really important. But that made me listen, and certainly I was able to follow you, even though you were discussing some difficult topics on the subject. So the fact that I could follow you made me completely understand it, and your confidence as a witness made me want to believe it. The cross of Dr. Williams. It was short and sweet.
Yes, absolutely.
To the point.
I agree. It was. And sometimes that's all you need. That's all you need. And you read the situation and you understood that's all that we need right now. And that packs more of a punch that really puts a period on the sentence of what you're looking for and what message you're trying to portray. So you did a great job. You are also one who has a very calm, poised demeanor, which is something I'm trying to learn all the time. So I'm very impressed by that. But yeah, absolutely. You were very to the point. Why waste time if you don't have to?
Yeah, and I'm going to pretty much piggyback on that totally. I think that when someone does a quick cross, it makes every question feel so much more impactful. I think the way that you delivered the questions also kind of adds to that. So I think the delivery and the amount of questions and how you really were just so pointed on cross was great.
I'm kind of just mimicking everything everybody else said, but yeah, your cross was short, but it was so to the point that it worked really well. Good job.
Yes, your cross was very effective. And I actually really liked at the beginning of your cross when you asked the court, can you just give me a second? And I don't even know exactly what you were doing, but it signaled to me that this is now your courtroom. It's mine, but it's yours. And so you asking to do that and feeling comfortable to be able to acknowledge that you need a second to either gather your notes or gather your thoughts or gather your exhibit or whatever that may be is perfectly fine and acceptable. And I think it shows a level of comfort and confidence that you have with the courtroom. And how you had that in this remote world while sitting down, I'm not quite sure, but you owned it. That felt really good and comfortable.
Thank you, guys.
Yes. So
Thank
then
you.
we have closing arguments. Plaintiff's closing.
So the plaintiff's closing I thought was incredibly effective. It touched on the sympathy and the emotion of the case without being too much. It also laid the foundation for how am I supposed to be thinking? What's the roadmap? Where are my thoughts going here? So all in all, just very, again, you cause the cancer, you catch the consequences. I'm so obsessed with that. So that was really great.
Yeah, and I agree. I think the way that you kind of balanced facts and the emotions and everything else was really well done. I think it's kind of, especially in closing, I think when you get to kind of like, I don't know, argue a little more, I think there's an urge to maybe really hone in on some of the emotional aspect of things. And I think that you have a good balance where that was certainly present, but it wasn't, it didn't like overwhelm the closing. And so I think the balance of, you should feel bad for this person, but it is also very clearly not like it's their fault, right? And so I think the balance of that was great.
I totally agree. Balance was the key to you, and you pulled at our heartstrings and said, remember, and you kind of tied into that emotion yourself, and that was great.
I agree. Not only did you bring in the emotion, you adjusted your speed when the time came up, and I could see that you had a lot more. I'm not sure if in your mind you were cutting things that you were saying, but you definitely sped up. And time shows a level of respect for, I think, all of the parties, that I'm adequately prepared and here's the time that I've been given and I will fix it in that spot. And then you did that well with the rebuttal when the judge had forgotten that you still have time. If you would have said, Judge, I still have 30 seconds, I would have been like, sit down. But the way that you did it was, oh, sorry, Judge, you didn't like call me out of being stupid or anything. You're just like, hey, I think I still have some rebuttal. And your demeanor in asserting that was helpful for your case, because you got to have the last word, made me have to say, whoops, sorry, forgot about that. And it was the way that you did it was just really effective. And it's hard to be able to tell the judge that they've done something wrong in a professional manner that they're not going to knee-jerk reaction to. But you did a really great job. The defense is closing.
Thank you guys for the feedback.
Sure. With the wind in the hair, yes.
Yeah. Gavin, where did you go to law school? Because I'm impressed. You are just very composed, you're very logical, you're very to the point. You just lay it out the way it needs to be laid out for us to follow you. Very impassioned when you need to be, reserved when you need to be. You just did a really, really great job.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think the delivery was great. You really kind of owned it. It was fully focused on everything you were saying, kind of just really taking it in. And I think that's a lot to do with the delivery, a lot to do with the content as well. It felt very prepared. And it wasn't like pre-prepared though, because it also kind of went with some things that I had to assume or, kind of came up today that you may not have necessarily anticipated to be, at least to that extent. So I think the way that it was kind of adaptable and prepared and the delivery was great. It really kept the listener engaged.
You were the lawyer, and that's what came off of you as far as your character, everything. I certainly hope that you're another one. I certainly hope to see you in a courtroom someday. Awesome job, young man.
Agree. You tied the themes in. I loved the hair toss. Again, one of those moments where I was like, oh, I'm not wearing a mask, but I'm sure my face reacted to that, because it it gave me the visual, and it gave me like a lot more than just a simple flip of the hair. You reminded me that the opinion was an expert opinion, and so lend credence to it and why I should be paying attention to that. And then you also gave me, you wove in the exhibits, which and then you put your own spin on them, of course, just to highlight what me, if I were a juror, should be looking at, which was really next level to be able to take all of that and also tell the jurors what to do in their next step. So I agree that you are incredibly comfortable in the courtroom. I would caution you to be too comfortable in the courtroom, because there certainly is a line there. You have a way of like smirking, and every once in a while I'm like, don't react to it, which may or may not throw some people off. But right, your confidence level right now is perfect. Don't go over that. Don't go over your line of confidence. But you did a great job. Overall, this was really, really impressive trial, and I don't know what I would decide.
Thank you for all the feedback. I appreciate that.
Sure. Good luck to all of you. So, Mr. Arod, do we need to give the jurors a moment